Hi friends, I'm Sarah Jo Strawberry, and today I'm going to show you how I made this Venomous Tentacula. As you can see, it is heavily inspired by the appearance of Venomous Tentacula in Hogwarts Legacy, because I just thought it had so much more personality and would be a fun DIY project. But I did incorporate a little bit of the original film, Venomous Tentacula. Some of the foliage and stuff is inspired by that. So it's a combination of the different appearances of Venomous Tentacula and my own take on it. And this was made primarily using items bought at the dollar store, Dollar Tree specifically, and was inspired by Bargain Bethany's Halloween DIY video from last year on how to make a piranha plant. This is the one I made last year. I made it a bit more like Audrey 2 with the Maxwell House can. I gave it a bit of my own twist from her video, but I will link that below, so if you want to try that one, you can. But yeah, let's get into it. Starting with the butterbeer planter. To start, I used this wooden planter that I already had at home. I believe it was originally from Michael's. I used a wood stain pen to just color in the entire planter. This particular pen I had used before, and it was more than enough for the planter. And don't do what I did. Go outside when you use the stain and wear gloves. And this is the final product once I had completely stained the entire planter. Next, I drew a circle around the bottom of the planter. I used my cookie jar because it happened to be the perfect fit for the size I wanted this circle to be. I used some red paint. I wouldn't recommend tempera paint, but that's what I had lying around, and this watercolor paint as well. And I mixed the two and painted within that circle I drew on the bottom. And this is what it looked like once it was all painted. After letting it dry, I took a pencil eraser to the bottom to just erase some of the top layer of paint to give it more of a worn, aged look. Next, I used these gold and yellow paints I already had at home to paint the word butterbeer across the bottom. I forgot to record myself stenciling it out, but as you can see, I stenciled it out in pencil. I used a photo of one of the butterbeer carts in Universal Japan as reference for how this looks. And then once it was all painted in, this is how it looked. Next, I did sort of the same on the side. I made it look like it was a barrel cut in half, which was a little tricky. I used a picture of the butterbeer gummy candy for reference, the barrel that comes in. And then once that was all painted, this is how it looked. And our butterbeer barrel is complete. And now on to making the plant itself. To start constructing the plants, I used these foam footballs from Dollar Tree and a Sharpie to mark them up. Get it? Sharpie. I also used these cutters, box cutters, to help get through the foam, as well as some scissors. And these wooden dowels, also from Dollar Tree, to use as the stem of the plant. These came with that hexagon at the bottom that I used for some and was able to remove. And finally, these makeup sponges. So I started by drawing out the stencil of what part I was going to cut out of the football. And it's okay if you mess up your stencil. You may have some stray marks, but you're either going to cut those out or paint over them, so it's not a big deal. Now to cutting out the foam. Be careful using cutters like this. I using that exact cutter I'm showing, once cut open my thumb and saw my own muscles, so cut away from yourself. That is the important lesson. So I started by just cutting along the outline I drew and continually going around until I got the cut through deeper. And once I had cut out enough, I was able to pull the foam apart. You need to use a little bit of strength, a little bit of elbow grease, but it's definitely easier than continuing to cut it. And save that foam piece, because you're going to need it for later. And so that's what it looks like once you get that first cut taken out. And I went back with the smaller cutter that I had to carve out a bit more of the details. Next, I hollowed out the inside of the plant head using the small cutter again. And once I had enough of it loosened up, I was able to start pulling out big chunks by hand. I later went in with the cutters and shaved a lot of the loose foam that was left over after pulling it out. I also went around the edge to trim the quote-unquote lip of the plant head and smooth it out a bit. Then I took my dowel and just kind of stabbed it through the back of the head, tried to find the right spot to place it, and twisted it in. You don't want it to go too far, you don't want it to come out the front. Once I found my placement, I took a glue gun and glued the end of the dowel as well as inside the plant head itself to better adhere it to the plant head. Next, we take our extra foam pieces that I said to save before, and that's how we're going to make the tongue. I traced out just a quick drawing of a tongue onto the foam. Also, sorry, I don't know why I keep switching tenses, but I've recorded this much now. Then I took my scissors and my cutter to cut the tongue out. I alternated between the two depending on what was needed. And once that was all loose, I was able to pull the tongue free and again use the scissors and my cutters to tidy up the edges, soften them down. I then glued inside the head where I wanted to place the tongue, as well as the end of the tongue itself, and attached it, held it down for a moment while it dried, and then once that was done, it was time to paint. So I used this pink spray paint I already had. It seemed like a good base for it, and covered it up completely, and then I let it sit to dry overnight. In the meantime, I started making my thorn teeth using the makeup sponges. So I cut it into this shape here and then went around with the scissors to trim it down more until it had a bit of a jagged wooden appearance. But we're going to bring that out more with the paint. As you can see here, I used this light brown paint and mixed it with this ivory paint. I then took the foam thorns and just dumped them in the paint, stirred them in, and this is how they came out. This is them sitting to dry. There were a lot that needed to be made. Next, to do the details on the thorns, I used this gel stain that I mixed with my light brown paint, and I just went along the edges themselves to paint along those lines. As you can see here, painting along those lines gave it more of a wooden appearance, looks a bit more like tree bark. Then to paint the inside of my plant head, I used this black paint, this dark purple, and dark blue paint, mix them all together, and started around the tongue and tried to create a gradient going out so it goes from darker, more shadowy to lighter. And this is how they looked when they were done. Next, I'm taking out my red paint again and this light purple, and we are going to paint the tongue and some details. At the top of the tongue, I used this light purple paint and tried to paint it in a gradient so it faded as it went down to the tip of the tongue. And then used the red paint for the tip of the tongue itself and did the same gradient thing as I was working my way up, so the colors could kind of blend into each other. And that's the finished tongue. Next, I took this metallic purple paint and painted splotches within the mouth of the tentacula. Next, I combined my purple and blue paints and used one of the extra makeup sponges. And I used this to coat the back of the tentacula heads. You'll need to go over this with a couple layers of the paint. I did 2 or 3 until I got the result I wanted. As you can see, I did it in a bit of a splotching pattern to give it some texture, as well as spreading it across the back. And this is how it looked with the first layer of paint. And then this is both final. Next, I took this green paint and used it to paint the stems. And again, we're doing some gradients here. I mixed it with some of my other paint when I started at the top, and then worked my way down, making it more green as it went down the stem. I also added some of the green paint to the back of the head. And next, it's time to glue in our thorn teeth. This will take a bit of time. The thorn teeth are definitely the most tedious part, but once you have them placed around in a way you like, this is how it comes out. Now it's time to place the heads in the retaining planter that I failed to mention earlier. I took these floral foam blocks, cut them up, and stuck the dowels with the heads attached into them. And then I arranged them inside the retaining planter. And once I got them situated in a way that I liked, I used my extra floral foam to help secure it in place and just make it so that they don't move as much. I also glued them down. I don't think it's that necessary, but you can do that as well to make sure they're extra secure. And to fill in some more space, I used this moss and these decorative stones. Just dump them in there. It also helps to give it a bit of weight. Then I have this faux greenery that I also got at Dollar Tree, of different types, some tendrily, some more leafy. And I went in and just arranged them in a way that I liked, that felt natural, that I thought looked natural. Some of the pieces I glued into place, either gluing them to the stems or the back of the tentacula heads. And then I took my retaining planter and put it in our butterbeer planter. And there you have it. Ta-da! And then finally, here's this little... Oh, are we gonna focus? Yes. No, let me hide. This little plant tag that I made for it too. For the plant tag, I used these bamboo skewers, some scissors, some extra scrap cardstock paper, and this tag that I designed on Canva and printed onto sticker paper. So I affixed the sticker tag to the cardstock and had a chat with my husband while I did, and then cut the tag itself out. So fair warning, going to be using the glue gun again. So I put some glue on the bamboo skewer and then attached the tag itself. And once that was dry enough, I snipped off the top of the skewer so it wasn't sticking out above the tag. And then it's done. It's stick it in the plant, and you have your final product. So this is how it looked when I was finished, and here's a closer look. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you take a crack at this yourself. I'd love to see what you make, so post your pictures, tag me on Instagram. I'll put my Instagram handle below, but it's at Sarah Jo Strawberry, same as it is here on YouTube. So yeah, have a good day and happy Halloween! And I'll see you in the next video. Bye! I also attempted a DIY Mandrake, but it's kind of pathetic looking. Not as bad as the other one I made that I actually filmed myself making. That is a DIY project that I will not be posting, obviously. Hopefully in the future I can try it again and, I don't know, make it look less like a Mandrake had a baby with the sorting hat or something. This is like if Mr. Hanky was a Mandrake for Halloween.